Now, I have a question for Dr. Singh. NA and CL really helped me quite a bit. But I'm a mathematician, I'm sorry, I was a mathematician some time back. So I have the question 10 plus 2 39 still bugs me. Okay? And that's a person's impact. I become agitated more because of somebody's action. You know, is that really go up? The energy level, the anger, whatever it really would go up in that? What's your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, I think it was meant to get attention, so I'm glad that you keep it just about 39. But remember, that was only a calculation of hydrogen atom. So that's the very first element in the periodic table. We have used number of hydrogen atoms, carbons, and other things. Physically speaking, that kind of force probably is infinite, because that's just one hydrogen. We have trillions of hydrogens in our body, trillions of carbons in our body, and so the interaction of that sort is quite possible if we are talking about physical neutrality versus charge. But what I was trying to give with that example was two messages. One thing, how to approach things scientifically. And so that was an example how we can really look at these things categorically and perhaps find some measure of it. I know I practice yoga, maybe some of you do. I learned from a couple of people, and then it's always told that once you do yoga, your body gets charged. Physically also gets charged. The surface gets charged. So you should not take baths, for example, for half an hour to an hour after you have practiced yoga and meditation. So there is a real value in getting physically charged. And we of course know simple things, rubbing things around, static charges are created, all related to electron programs. But more importantly, I think is that is the nature of us being built is the same, even though we have added other labels of our existence, which is more consciousness and living, is the same process, which is more of a scientific nature, or a scientific way of looking at it, is so everything else that we have, in addition to the physical, which I use the COSA system to talk about, we have energy layer, and we have mental layer, and we have intellectual layer. They all work in the same direction. I did not present it today, obviously did not have time. So anybody who is interested, there is much deeper discussion going to happen in 2 weeks. We will be having a Vedanta Congress here. There are about 100 papers being presented. And I have done some research on, actually a more provocative number, where I have calculated a consciousness coefficient of a human being, which is 5.05 times 10 to the power 17, which is much easier number to deal with. But it's a consciousness coefficient that can be calculated, which means even consciousness can be quantified. Would that be an absolutely right number? No, of course not. Nothing is absolutely right. But that's the place to begin. So one could even, the idea is that just like calculation can be made for forces on electrons and protons, the same way calculation can be made on ideas like consciousness, ideas like feeling, emotional. There are, and we know that somebody talked about emotional quotient and all that. So I think that was the major factor that I was trying to convey.
Thank you very much. Anybody other questions?
This question is to Professor Madhu Javed. If I recollect your analogy, I like your analogy of the animals surrounded by fence, right? You give the analogy of animals surrounded by fence.
You give the analogy of animals surrounded by fence.
Oh, yeah.
Or walls and walls.
Oh, yeah.
So if I don't know whether I'm correctly understanding or not. The fence is already created and we are dumped in. Isn't it so? This is when we were born, the fence is already created. We, the human beings, being dumped in. And we want to get out of the fence, right? Is it holistic inner science, the new approach to come out of that fence and have the freedom to know the self? Or is it the way to prevent us from entering into that area?
Was the illustration for letting the people know that we are restricted by our own ways. If we want to come out of that, basically my topic was how to unlock your own vision. Your vision is locked, and that locking I wanted to illustrate. That's what I was explaining. Does that answer your question?
He's trying to find out how can we use whatever we have here to come out of that.
My topic was limited to unlocking the vision. And for unlocking the vision, the rest of the day, the people that are going to present will be open to that.
I would.
I mean, if you wanted to talk about that, that was not my topic then. But I don't want to introduce that topic.
I would
That
request.
was a topic belonging to all this.
I would request these other panelists, Dr. Dipukai, Dr. Singh, or Dr. Mehta, you want to expound on that?
Okay, what I understand, he said that you're already inside, and holistic science has the solution for that. Right? He said that the unlocking we have so many preoccupations. What are you talking about? Holistic science has the solution to come out of all of our preoccupations by having the right vision of life.
I'm never sure, I never want to get out of the fence. because there will be another fence of some kind. What I understand from this kind of situation is to work, I mean, this is the state of mind is what really is more important. Who does holistic science discussion that we had this morning, this afternoon, it does provide you tools to raise the state of your mind, whereby fence does not matter. So if you're worried about fence, it's like a difficult situation, and I can understand a professor of business would always think like that.
So to add a little more at the end, number one, initially I was not aware that I'm in a fence. So first it leads me inner examination whether really I'm in a fence. So awareness. Second, as he rightly said, let the fence be there, let the circumstances be there. Within the circumstances, I want to enjoy my inner freedom. That's the holistic science all about. It doesn't remove the circumstances of life or living. In fact, both are synergistically. Even the fence becomes beautiful. That means that even living in life becomes beautiful. But within, I get free. That's the main answer.
That brings one question in my mind. We say whether it's a fence or not a fence, we need to live naturally. So, can you expand on what naturality is? to live with the nature or naturality.
Probably I understand that when you live naturally, then in the worst of the life circumstances, you won't be having that inner disturbance. Outside disturbance would be there, circumstances would be very disturbing, but with your inner understanding, you'll be at peace.
How do you balance? I have an outer problem.
You can see me in my office.
That's not a good answer. I'm sure everybody
Maybe,
has.
no, I don't want it to be too personal.
Everybody, I'm sure, has the same
Then
problem.
I need to ask you many questions.
Okay. So what I understand is naturality and normality, two words given by Jnani Purus, pertains to the relative living of mind, that is mind, speech, body, etc. I as pure self is free of everything. So I am just the ignorance here, but both has to go hand in hand or parallel. For me to remain in my pure self, this also has to become natural and normal. What does that mean is, normality we understand each one of us in various phases of life, and that has also been tested by older rishis. A very gross example, if I don't eat at all, if I leave everything, that's below normal. If I eat too much, it is above normal. Similarly, in all walks of life, I should come to the normality that's pertaining to relative living. And naturality is something where, depending on inner and outer circumstances, needs and urges and other things, I'm flowing like a flow of water. And river or a flow of water just flows. It doesn't look back, doesn't jump ahead. And as the thing unfolds with the scientific circumstantial evidences, as I already said, I will try my best with all care, caution and ability, but ultimately I will see what is unfolding in the stream of scientific circumstantial evidences. If required, correcting my projection path. So natural means in synchronization with the scientific circumstantial evidences, using your best care, caution and ability. That's what I understand, but that's pertaining to my relative living, and I as pure self remaining nowhere else here.
Thank you.
Just one more. Just one more. Your answer really created a kind of puzzle and also paradox in my mind. One is that you say that the pure self is at the higher level, spiritual level. Relative self is at the lower level. And you said these two are parallel. And the problem, the paradox is that if I see pure self in myself and relative self in my neighbor, there is a conflict. If I see relative self in myself, relative self in my neighbor, conflict. If I see pure self in myself, pure self in neighbor, no conflict. So how do you?
I'm sorry to say, but unless you have the initiating vision, unless your inner vision opens out through the grace of Jnani Purus, you are not really going to experience this, and this is going to be a little theoretical discussion, but still I will answer that, What I'm trying to say is, Shailesh is doing all the duties, all the things coming across him in as amicable, good way as possible, which will not hurt anybody or which will satisfy everybody. I remaining as pure self, but because I have that vision, at the same time, suppose you have come across me, or my patient has come across me, I see both in him. By relative viewpoint, he is my patient, and by real viewpoint, he is pure self. So, seeing both, this is in a much better position to deal with my patient, because in that case, he is not my patient alone, but I am seeing also pure self in him. So, this is in a better position, and my patients are never my patients, they are as me only, as one. So, it's a parallel working system where this relative and my relative also, I am seeing relative and real with whom I am working. But this has to be experienced, and that comes as we understand and we have experienced. It comes once somebody unlocks through grace. Otherwise, till that point of time, it's going to be a game of intellect.
One of the things that I would add to that, what holistic science advises us is, adjust ourselves. Whatever has happened, move on. And if I get emotional or hurt, it's my fault. So this 3 plus more, these are something like we said. Once we have the holistic science, it is already built in us, which automatically just comes out, and that stops us from sort of.
Perhaps the way you focus within the life and within the family, with a concentration on duty, within your duties, the rights of everyone else are included. And in their duties, your rights, your parents' rights, children's rights, they are included. The duties never create a conflict. The rights start creating a conflict. So this is a complementary way the system will function in the complementary way by the use of the duties. If there were groups in the Maryland University, I was a speaker, and there were 2 groups. They were asking, why not rights, why not rights? So I went on the blackboard and I put 2 groups, small a, b, c, e to z, and the capital, big case, A to Z. The big case A to Z, I said, this is a separate country, and small A to Z is a separate country. The small A to Z is a country based on the duties, and duties. The big case is based on the rights, and rights. The big case people, if they live in a wing at the same country, and everybody asking my rights, my rights, my rights. So I asked the question, who is going to provide those rights?
Very well said.
With a small A to Z, the people who are interested in the duties, they would always have something to do. And once they start the cycle, action, reaction, action, reaction, action, reaction, automatically it would function. And perhaps I'm not glad or sad. I would make only one observation. That India has survived with the poverty only because of the duties. There's a difference in the system. And I would just end at that, and that might probably explain. Thanks.
Very well said. Very well said.
Thank you again for several interesting topics from various people. I talked about ego before. I like to bring you a new topic, enviness and greed. We all live in a very highly competitive world, and every day, every minute we are trying to raise the bar so that we can do better to ourselves, better than others, because we are all judged by the people, okay? And I'd like to know, from the holistic science point of view, how does envy and greed lead our life, and how do we overcome, we don't want to be a slave to that. So I just let to hear some comments from the board.
Well, this question was asked to me in a lunchtime. I had no time to address it. I'll try to, and then I'll request other panelists also. Well, as you said, we live in the world of comparison and competition. Fine. There's a question, without competition and comparison, can we live? Our human mind may not agree to that. But if we look to the nature, I'm saying one aspect, I'll say other aspects also. Does the rose blossom in competition to somebody? Does a beautiful mango become a beautiful fruit in competition to somebody? No, it's a natural thing. So if I allow myself to naturally blossom out to the best of my abilities, as these people are doing, they don't have anything to compare, but probably, and somebody said, compete with your own self to do better and better and better. So that's one way of looking at the thing, that natural and normal living is the best answer. Having said that, I don't say competition or comparison is wrong. No, fine. As long as it is not bothering you, as long as it is not creating stress, as long as it is not taking away your sleep, as long as it is not dragging you into foul practices, go with that. But know that the natural and normal living, you can bruise them out like anything. And probably at times this stress and these foul things hinder your progress. They hamper you. So that's one aspect of looking at the thing. And you are talking of envy or greed. Again, I think part of the answer is there. To the extent it is healthy for you and for others, I would say, it's okay. But most of the times it's a relative terminology. And if I have to say, be envy of those who are enlightened ones. Why don't you envy those who are enlightened ones? Why don't you have a greed for correct knowledge, correct practices, those who are higher than you? Envy them, be in race with them, and you will get everything. So that's my answer, and it's open to others.
There are several perspectives on envy and greed. Just if you take yoga as a perspective, the greed, anger, lust, as people say, which is calm, desires, they all are forms of energy that exist as part of ego. Ultimately, it is all deriving from the ego, and they are going to exist. The question is, what direction do you use them for? And I think Dr. Sadis is trying to say, which direction do you use it? It cannot go away. It will be there. It's part of our existence. So when they call, forgive those people who cannot understand the Sanskrit word, it's Kam, Krodh, Moh, Matsar, which is the desire, the anger, the greed, the infatuation, the pride, the ego. It is on one hand, this is all part of us. If you can overcome, and by overcome means transform it into selfless service. If it is not directed to my and me, but for others. So if you want to be envious, if you want to be greedy, but be greedy for others, not for you. If you want to really take pride in others. If you really want to make a lot of money, make it, but for others, to help others. Then it transforms into what is known as very, very important concept. It's called Sham, Dam, Diksha, Uparati, Shraddha, and Samadhan. The same, it's exactly in the same format, parallel. So then you can transform that into something that then leads to enlightenment, because these are all part of, it's all written in Bhagavad Gita as well as in Yoga Sutras. So if you take from that perspective, it's difficult. And I think practices, I was also, by the way, hoping that there would be some practice in addition to knowing how to begin these processes. Of course, you can take small steps in your own life and then try to see this. I mean, first is to just acknowledge that these things are energies, they exist, but they can be transformed. And then start transforming them, which first thing is remove that I'm not going to do it for selfish reasons. I'm going to make a lot of money. I'm going to become on top of the world for others. And I think that's what Madhubhai was also saying. When it becomes then your duty to help others. If it turns into duty, it's the same thing, then it suddenly does not hurt you at all, does not become a problem at all. Actually, a lot of people, I was watching a television yesterday, and some of you know Murari Bapu, who does Katha. And I was so surprised. He was in California, and he said, normally I don't raise money or something, but because this huge disaster that happened in Uttarakhand, he said that he already has donated from his ashram 5 lakh rupees, and which is 500,000 rupees for those who don't know a lot. But he said he doesn't normally start anything, but he said because it's such a huge loss, he has this feeling that he should raise 1 crore, which is about $200,000. He said he has feeling that he should raise 1 crore rupees for this purpose. And So he said, I'm going to put one lot mine, and his other associate would put one lot there, and somebody else said that's one lot there. And it took about half an hour. You know how much money they have raised? He wanted 1 crore, he had 4. $1 million he raised in half an hour sitting, a meeting like I'm sure there were probably 1,000, maybe 2,000, 3,000 people. So this is what happens when you do it for others. Nothing is impossible at that point. And I think this is the idea that if you really want to think of how to transform oneself into wealth or position or power, this is where I think this becomes very powerful once you transform yourself into from self to others.
I think perhaps I get the picture of the question. If your question pertains to the values, values have to be progressing upward. Physical to mental is positive. Something you do for physical pleasure, something you do for mental. Mental is better than physical. Perhaps you can go higher and say intellectual. That's the third stage. After that, spiritual. So if I'm progressing, the only indication may come in, say 10 years ago, let's say I was 25% physical, 25% mental, 25% intellectual, 25% spiritual. And 10 years after, my percentages at the lower end become less, the higher end become more and more. I'm moving in a positive direction. The second value which I think I thought over, working for excellence. Your excellence, not my excellence, not his excellence, your own excellence. That is positive, that is spiritual. You're not competing. When you compete, it is a negative value. You may be better than someone, you may come out better than someone, but individually I start hating the other person. Therefore it is negative. It is not spiritual. But you would be excellent. And I think the Bhagavan Krishna also says, you do to the best of your ability within your family. I don't know, I thought like a question from the answers. It might be something like this. So this is the way I think. There are other ways you can relate to our this increasing gradient of the values. You can say now these are the Sanskrit terms. Tamas to rajas, rajas to sat. That's a positive. Or vikruti to prakriti, and prakriti to sanskriti. Is a positive way. Or the last one, pursue, this is again Indian terminology. Pursue all the 4 purusharthas. Dharma, artha, kama and moksha. Do not just pursue one. Automatically there should be progress. I thought your question related to this, so I answered that.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have a question?
Just we were discussing about the transforming the energy from negative to positive side. So same way, anger, how can we transfer the anger from negative to positive side?
How can you do that? I think the anger comes when you have some attachment to certain things. You have certain desires. When that does not meet, then we get upset. And we show this aura being upset to some people. So we have to accept, first of all, that we should not be attached to things. Well, it's very difficult. I think attachment comes natural. I think we were talking about what is natural and what is not natural. So one way to practice is then to practice attachment to everything equally. I don't know whether that's going to be very possible also. But these are the 2 extremes. One is to be detached completely, another one is to attach completely. Either one of them will do. Why this works is because of, going back to my presentation earlier in the morning, it creates neutrality. In one case, you are neutral, you are not attached to anything, you are not acting, so there is no charge. And the second one is you are equally attached to everything, so there is a balance in your charge. And that's how you can balance the anger. I mean, we all have gone through that, and I used to get very upset, very angry. But slowly, because I realized this, slowly I have worked very, very hard, and I think that works. But I think some of this you have to do meditation, for example. You really need to pay attention to be able to focus on something, which means you can detach yourself or direct yourself from so many other things to something that you really want to. And if you practice it enough, as in my own personal experiences, then it moves away from the attachment and it slows down your anger.
I just want to make a comment, Dr. Singh. You really opened up the true meaning of yoga upayog paropara by transforming energy from negative to positive or doing things for others. When you do that, same thing I felt in the last question that you answered. Instead, the anger is the cause of the most attachment you have, and that is to yourself. If you attach yourself not to yourself, but everybody else in the world, that anger will automatically be born. That's what I understand. I'm not the speaker, but pardon me. That's what
Did
came
you
to
have
my
a question
mind.
also? Did you have a question also?
No, I didn't have a question. I just
No, I
wanted to
agree.
Thank
I agree
you for the explanation of Yog Paropara.
I absolutely agree, and I think, I mean, again, I'm just going to back to I'm from a village and in India, and my knowledge was, at least in the beginning, was very informal. But if anyone of you have read Tulsidas, there are few places, of the two great personalities that we have in India, that is still people believe in Ram and Krishna. And while Krishna had given whole speech, and there is Bhagavad Gita, Ram is not known to have given any speech, except for few places. And one of the places, he was asked, what is the greatest dharma, or what is the righteous way of living life? And the only thing he said, Parahit saris dharma nahi bhai. There is nothing bigger dharma than helping others. And so he's such a great personality, even if you just don't consider it as a reincarnation of God or anything, just a great personality. And he's looking at his personality, and somebody, my village is only 28 miles from Ayodhya, and so we are very influenced by that kind of sayings and that kind of culture. And I find that to be absolutely fitting everywhere. If you're really working and living even in this country where really, I know a lot of things, people not necessarily very happy, and there are a lot of things not going the right way. But this part I have learned here, also people in this country are very open to help others anytime that you see, and that is natural. And if you start doing that, then you create better society, you create better yourself. Everything becomes better. So I think that's exactly where I was coming from. Although I use yoga as an example of how to practice it.
I have one comment on the positivity. If there is any activity going positive, that is also not good. It should be within a limit. If a person have more enthusiasm, he can become manic, bipolar disorder. There is always a limit, so that he should be in a normal range. There are so many diseases, psychiatric diseases in this country, bipolar. That is a maniac form. When the person doesn't care, he can do anything he wants.
Well, bipolar by nature means that it's both negative and positive.
No. They are not. Positive doesn't care. He can go to the moon, but that is also positive. But that should be within the limit.
It's true. But first thing I want to just say that bipolar by definition means both negative, but they also get very depressed.
The depressed is negative, but the positive is when he is manic.
Yes,
That
very true.
manic means the positive side of the enthusiasm.
Very true. Very
He
true.
is going to the moon, but he cannot go to the moon.
Well-
He wants to fall from the Eiffel Tower.
Yeah,
Okay?
yeah.
He-
I
He
understand.
will die.
I understand. Of course, there is extreme.
There is extreme, there
Yes.
is a limit, okay?
Yeah, very true. But I somehow think that we are all bipolar to a certain degree. And it's only a question of managing.
Yes.
There are sometimes these bipolar people are managed badly by the society because they are not given the opportunity. I mean, I know that it should be, still has to, because we are living in a society and then we have to follow the norms and conditions that we live in. But a lot of us are quite bipolar because, to give one example of bipolarity, although this is not exactly, I understand and accept your idea, is that it's considered in science also is considered very important. Anything that has it's called dynamic range. If you have a dynamic range larger, then you are considered, you have great opportunity for you. And one of the examples of dynamic polarity range is elephant. You know why Ganesh has an elephant head? Because why the elephant head is very important, because the trunk can sense an ant on the ground, and it also can uproot a tree. So it has, on one hand, it is so sensitive that it can sense an ant. On the other hand, it can uproot a tree. So it is a kind of extreme example that is, but an elephant has a big head, it knows how to balance it.
Thank you. There are some forms, if you are filling, please leave with us. And
Just a minute, Dr. Balram Singh, actually we had intended session of some practice, but unfortunately scientific circumstantial evidences, I could not get it done. And I was always pressed by Rajni by quick. So sorry for that, but I do mean, and some other time if the opportunity comes, we'll start with that. I do agree that I had intended practice session. Somehow I had not been able to do that, and I'm sorry for that.
I really think that has been very exciting. I honestly did not mean to be here the whole day. I came in the morning thinking that I will do a few things and go to my lab and come back later. But it has been so exciting that I've been able to stay. So it has been very fruitful. I'm very grateful to the whole group that has been working for months. Madhu Bhai had initiated this process. Rajni Bhai joined Falguni and others, I forget the names, that they have been the gentlemen sitting there I met. So it has been really great experience. This is something that Center for Indian Studies is very much interested in promoting this kind of idea so that we are able to understand and initiate more scientific research on this, because it's very important. It's difficult. These are very difficult subjects. These are not something that will be readily acceptable. They should not be readily acceptable. They should be practiced and they should be tested and they should be examined by others and see whether that works. I'm looking personally, I look for advancing science, how to advance science itself, and that's why I'm interested in this. So I've been very grateful to obviously the gentlemen who have been very much in the forefront of all this, and I appreciate the audience which is still sitting here at least and trying and asking these questions. And I'm sure these people who are asking questions, some of them I know, and they have been into this, and I think it's really a good sign.
Thank you. And I have been putting my decision of projection to Mother Nature that this is just the beginning and we can continue this journey collectively ahead with scientific study as well as meeting again and continuing this. So I'll be more than happy to do that from my side.
we'd like to thank you also for, taking this opportunity for us to be here and be a gracious host. And, we learn more about you, and yes, we agree that we can progress scientifically, like Dr. Mehta, Dr. Mehta was saying, the subjectivity is always there and always have been there, and subjectivity can meet with objectivity.
If I take last minute, I think even that can be measured, as he said,
Yeah.
and we have n number of examples that even in a critical ultimate stage when they were living their physical body, the people have experienced extreme coolness and calmness, and we have been witnesses, the doctor had been witnessing all the patients. So that could have been measured, but unfortunately we had no functional MRI available with us. Otherwise, that could have been documented, and we wish to document that. And not last but not the least, I just came across 2 studies of over here. One was done in some Massachusetts university, and it was labeled as self-distancing. Somebody can go and find very briefly 2 groups of students were taken, and they were provoked how much they are provoked. Next time, one group was taught that you from distance, as if somebody is provoked and you are viewing from distance. The other group was not taught anything, and again they measured, and they could measure that the group which was practicing self-distancing had much less effect than the group which was not taught anything. And I also read something about self-talking, as if what we are practicing, I'm guiding Shailesh, and that also has a lot of improvements. So there is very, very vast room of everything, and we wish to continue. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and that's what I'd like to do, and my wishes are also that we like to meet with Kanudaraji, who is a holistic scientist, and I like, my vow is that you meet him so scientists can talk to scientists, and I'd like to thank Deepakanandji, Shailashanandji, especially Madhubai, who architected all of this stuff, and of course, like you said, Samir family and Falguni family, they really work hard to make this a great success, and Satnarayan family, they really made a success.
Let's give a loud applause to all those who helped.
Thank you very much, keep in touch, and please bug Dr. Singh to have similar sessions next time.